Web3 is a new frontier. Often, the thing about new groundbreaking technologies is that there are few regulatory and legal guidelines because the technology doesn't fit the current ones. Lucky for us, today I'm talking to Oliver Scherenberg, who brings clarity into the legal aspects of Web3. Hallo and herzlich willkommen to the Bernhard Neumann podcast. Here you get insights, assessments, and knowledge around the topics of Web3, NFTs, and crypto. I'm your host, Bernhard, and today I'm here with my guest, Oliver Scherenberg. He's an intellectual property attorney helping companies get things right in Web3. He also created a platform called Web3 Lex, which is an online knowledge base providing legal education for the Web3 community. I really appreciate it, Oliver. And enough of the introduction. Let's hear it from you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Bernhard. Yes, so indeed, thank you very much. Being an intellectual property attorney is always exciting in these times, especially. And I'll be happy to tell you more about my experience and, yeah, groundbreaking new technologies that I kind of have seen before. So, yeah, let's get to it.
Yeah. Before we start, you have this wonderful image in the background. What is it? I'm intrigued.
Yeah, so this is actually my firm's logo. So as you can see, it looks kind of pixelated, but in fact it is a piece of art made out of little wooden blocks that are shaped in a way that they kind of throw some shadows. What it is my firm's logo. So you can see the S for Scherenberg, and it's legal and licensing here. So it's SLL combined in a way to make it look a little bit fancy. Wooden blocks with epoxy resin covered S letters. So
Wow.
I hope it looks fancy. If you ask about it, I already have my purpose.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, to me it looks very Web3 with the pixelated art. So I assume you like pixel art, you like CryptoPunks or even Cryptodes.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm indeed a big fan of simplicity and of art that is shown in a very simplistic way. For example, the CryptoPunks, as you say, I in fact own one even. I'm a big fan of Minecraft and other games of that kind. So yeah, indeed, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to combine natural materials like wood with the pixelated graphics.
Beautiful. Let's find simplicity in Web3 legal issues. Not that easy, probably. But yeah, before we get into this, there's many exciting topics we talked today. Maybe you can introduce yourself to the audience. Who are you? What do you do?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm an intellectual property attorney, which means I focus on the monetization of intangible assets. That is everything from patents over to trademarks, copyrights, but it's also everything related to media and to the monetization of digital content, if you so want. I started as a young attorney in a big law firm, focusing more on patents and transactions, moved over to other things, and the focus has been shifting back and forth a little bit, but it's always digital, it's always media, and the combination of all of that kind of logically brought me into the Web3 space as well. So I'm old enough to have experienced Web 1, Web 2, and now also Web 3. So some of the things that are new now, like rooms that are covering different jurisdictions, or let's say virtual rooms, maybe like chat rooms, or also the internet as such. That is something that I've experienced before, and I think it is useful to know that when you enter the Web3 space as well.
Very cool. I've never heard intellectual property be explained so clearly. Honestly, I love it. Like this makes a lot of sense. So, how did you find your way into Web3?
Well, to be honest, it was since I missed Bitcoin and was very upset about that, I tried to ignore it as much as I could. And then I tried to understand blockchain technology, like I think in 2016 or 17, and I completely failed because I simply didn't grasp what it was. And then 2017, the first time someone explained to me how they could bring blockchain technology to use, and I was kind of fascinated. And that was just a very simple example. Someone trading wines, very old bottles of wines, that are typically sold at auctions. So they're taken out of the cellar, shipped to an auction, sold to someone. That person takes it back, puts it in their cellar, but no one ever drinks it. So it
Mm.
doesn't make any sense to transport it from A to B, taking it out of the perfect storing conditions and not drinking it. So instead, what they did is to have a substitute being the token. So the token can be traded, and the wine bottle stays wherever it is best stored. And whoever wants to claim it is the owner of the token. They can drink it, but if you don't want to, you can just trade on the token as a substitute. That was the first time when I thought, well, that makes a lot of sense. But it even took a little bit longer before I had my first client relations, and that actually just started, well, maybe last year when I had my first cases.
Yeah, yeah, crazy. It must be like, first of all, such a cool story with a real use case. Like, that's what people get into Web3 for. Like, oh, yeah, this is a cool use case. And yeah, you said it. This must be a strange feeling, right? With law and like so new. I don't know. Like usually you look in those. This is how I imagine it. You look in those old books. Okay, let's see what this case was and everything. And now all of a sudden, there's no real cases, no yeah, how does that feel like when you like you're not making it up, but like it's so new?
Yeah. So I think our legal tradition is rather favorable to new developments. So we are, let's say, based on the ancient Roman law system, which allows a very high degree of abstract wording in the code, which means the code that we use today is over 100 years old or sometimes even older, and we can still apply it to standard situations of business and of human interactions and business interactions, because it has been anticipated that it's just finding the basic principles, and then it leaves to the court, for example, or to the judges or to the developments to define the details of a case. So it doesn't really matter where you make a transaction. It is just the fact that you make a transaction by taking A to B and B giving money to A. That is something that happens. It doesn't matter if in a virtual space or in which kind of technical environment. And you have a lot of advantage if you do it like that, as opposed to other legal systems where they try to define each individual case. Which means if you have a code like in Germany, for example, your paragraph will be very short. You will just have a very abstract description of how the transaction shall work. In other jurisdictions, like in the US, for example, it would be very, very detailed. So every individual case that of a transaction will be listed, which has advantages because it's very clear for those that are listed, but those that are not listed, it's completely unclear. And then you will need to develop case law, and the case law will need to build upon that. So, insofar, the Roman legal system, if you so want, is rather prepared for these situations, but not totally. I mean, clearly, you could not anticipate virtual transactions in a virtual environment that has different jurisdictions, that doesn't touch borders. It's not even clear where the persons are. So indeed, we will need to develop some stuff further, but we have quite a good toolkit with the existing law.
Very cool insight. Yeah, never thought of it this way, but this makes me, yeah, more bullish. Also, Europe, maybe Germany, that we have like maybe an easier start here to develop the laws. Before we get into some deep topics, I would like, since your project Web3 Lex is also about education, I would like to talk real quick about that. Yeah, what are you doing with this? How can we use this as normal people?
Sure. Web3 Lex is the idea that everyone can get easy access to answers about legal topics in Web3. So when we created this platform, the idea was we want to educate ourselves in fields of law that we don't understand. So my focus, as we already said, is intellectual property monetization. That means I know a lot about copyrights, how to use copyright law in the context of NFT projects, how trademarks are applied, how trademarks are enforced, what the problems in the metaverse are, and all of that. But I don't know anything about regulatory law. So when do you need a financial regulatory license to do your NFT project? What is a DAO? How you do it? Where to pay taxes and when? How to avoid that? So all these topics that are super important for every client, I would love to at least have a basic knowledge when I talk to my clients. And therefore, I thought it makes sense to educate myself, first of all. So to ask these questions, take them back as a result of conversations I had with other fellow attorneys and tax advisors. And then I started noting them down. And then I thought, well, it's too much of a good source of information to not share it. And I came up with the idea that it may be useful for everyone else to know these answers as well. And since I did want to build a network of attorneys internationally who have the same interests in Web3 and tax law for Web3, it was just a natural development of this idea to say, why don't we publish a catalog of questions that we had, that we post ourselves or that we received? And then we publish the answers, but we also publish the answers for different jurisdictions. So people can compare the national laws. And as we said before, it is so super important if you do not know which national law applies, that you may be able to compare different national laws. So if you see that a question is answered in the same way, let's say in Germany, the US, Portugal, Dubai, and whatever, you may feel more comfortable just doing the transaction without knowing which law actually applies. So the combination of education for the people, it's a free to use database that we have so the community can use it. It's a free to use resource of individuals and of a network. And the combination of kind of also helping myself to find new clients was driving the entire initiative.
So cool. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for doing this. This is Web3 sharing spirit here at its best. Very cool. What's the website? Where can people check it out?
It's web3lex.io. And we're actually right now in the beta phase, which means we just started publishing one Web3 category. So we have different Web3 categories we want to cover. Right now, we already published the category of NFTs, and we're currently putting together the further questions and also answers for further categories, which are metaverse, DAO, and ENS domains. And we will have even further categories after that. But just for now, these are the 4 categories we will be having. First of all, we started with NFTs, and it's quite interesting already, and a lot of contributions we already received from over 50, I think, international contributors. And we have up to, I think, 250 or so lined up to make contributions. Need a little push every once in a while, but a lot of people are committed to contribute, and we're super happy about that.
Very cool. I'm excited about the ENS domain topic. Like, I guess it must be quite big since it's one of the 4 ones. How do you feel about ENS without going into detail?
Yeah.
It's also interesting from a legal standpoint.
It is super interesting. It is a bit of history repeating here as well. It is kind of the same development. The internet just became usable for the broader public when the URLs were not numbers and dots and lines and something like that, but when you could put names instead of just the numbers as a domain name. So every company could be easily identified instead of 1.9.1 point something. Now it's just mcdonalds.com, right? And it's kind of the same thing for the ENS domains, which are used to identify a wallet address. So instead of this cryptic kind of code language that you have right now, it's completely impossible to type it without making a mistake. You can have mcdonalds.eth. So if you want to interact with that wallet address and it is a certified address, you can be clear that it is owned by McDonald's in this case, then that will help the mass adoption a lot, and it will help people trust and interact also with crypto wallets. Now, you can imagine it is the same gold rush kind of feeling that people have, grabbing the domains of popular trademarks and company names, and it's exactly what is happening right now. So a lot of people have already grabbed some of the popular names, are trying to sell them, and it's even more difficult to get hold of these domains because you do not have really a domain server or a service. You do not have the name registrations. It's just very anonymous. It is entirely possible, but it's very difficult and very burdensome to get the domains from other people, due to the decentralized nature of these domains.
Yeah, that is quite a mess. You're right. Like there's many benefits to it, but this one is not one of them. Really cool. Excited for this. Whatever comes out with ENS. Yeah, I would like to transition. So before this recording, we talked. Like you very often asked about IP rights in the context of NFTs. I think there's several great podcasts with you out there, and so we would like to focus on a fresh new topic, or something that's top of your mind right now. What's going through the mind of a Web3 attorney right now?
We have a little bit of a development. I think we have seen a lot of NFT related questions in the first 3 quarters of 2022, but also in the second half of 2021. I think a lot has been said, and as you said, I think I have a couple of dozens of podcasts right now on that topic alone, which was great, and I really enjoyed every one of them. But things have moved on quite a bit since then, so I think people are more educated when it comes to NFTs and use rights today. I think people know much more about intellectual property of underlying assets. So I think it is a good moment to move on a little bit and expand the discussion. First of all, into other topics of NFT and IP even. But also, what I see on the client side is that these profile picture projects and these NFT projects that are just done to throw something out and just give yourself the impression of being a Web3 company now, they kind of are not a thing anymore. So either you are serious about your project, then you have a plan, you have a concept, you want to do something for the community, and you have a long-term engagement, or you simply do something else. And more of my clients, for example, are now focusing on some sort of metaverse kind of gaming experiences, immersive things that they can interact with their clients with, or their customers. So the development also on the legal side is more from the pure and simple NFT project to more complex NFT projects and to metaverse projects.
Yeah, cool. So, thanks for this insight. I think one thing we were talking about is, Web3 is all about ownership, right? And so, one thing we were talking about, and I found really interesting, is okay. So now those companies you were talking about, they give out their NFT, and then there's a secondary market, and so like. With traditional law, like you have a contract with a company, here you buy the stuff, but now it gets resold. And I found quite interesting how we talked about this aspect, and what we have to be aware of here when you resell assets digitally.
Yeah, I think that's a super important aspect, and it doesn't get enough attention at all. So just imagine what you do when you go into an art gallery, for example. I think that's a good example that you can use. You go into the art gallery, you buy a piece of art directly from the artist, maybe, and the artist tells you, "Well, I know it's typically not done like that, but I will give you the right to commercially exploit the underlying intellectual property. So you may use this graphic or this picture and print it on t-shirts, on coffee mugs, or whatever." This is a very unusual case. By the way, it's also a very unusual case in the NFT space, because as a default, you just buy the art, you hang it up your wall, and that was it. You do not get any commercial use rights. But now let's imagine, because there has been a certain development in the NFT space, that NFT projects come with the digital asset and some commercial use rights attached to them. Let's just assume that this is the standard, just for the example. So in this example with the artists in the gallery, they give you the piece of art and tell you you can do t-shirts and whatever. Now you make a collection and a huge agreement with a famous fashion brand, and they print t-shirts and whatever with your original piece of art. And then one day you say, "Well, I don't feel like keeping this asset any longer. I want to sell the art. And with the art, I want to sell the commercial use rights to someone else." So a new buyer comes in and buys this piece of art. Now the question is, what happens with the existing agreements that you concluded earlier with the fashion brand? And the answer is straightforward and very simple, and it is is subject to the law, by the way, so it's in every copyright code, at least that I know of, these agreements will continue. So they will not be terminated. That means that the fashion company will still continue to manufacture and to sell these T-shirts, and maybe depending on which national law applies, even the original owner, so you as the person owning it when you made the agreement, will still get the royalties. That is cool for you, but the asset is already passed on, so the new owner may find itself in a position where at least the fashion market may be closed for them, because this other company, this fashion company, may even have an exclusive right to print and manufacture these T-shirts. You, as the original owner, gets the money, so what you buy is in fact an empty shell. And exactly the same thing can happen in the NFT space. Just imagine you buy a CryptoPunk, and the CryptoPunk comes with the full commercial use rights, which means if you, as the first owner, made an agreement with a fashion brand, an exclusive license to manufacture and sell these T-shirts, the new owner cannot do anything with the CryptoPunk, even though it owns it. It owns it, but with the encumbrance of existing licenses that were concluded earlier, and maybe even the financial benefit of this license is not something that this new owner gets. Now, the follow-up question is, so how can I avoid that I buy an empty shell? Well, the only thing you can do is to have a contractual obligation of the person selling it to you, or a representation that they have not put any encumbrances on the asset. So you will buy the CryptoPunk free of any third-party rights. And if that representation is broken, they will be liable for damages. And I know in a typical space, you would do an agreement, you will sign the license agreement, it will have a clause that says no encumbrance, no third-party rights. That's not how NFT transactions typically work. So it's just putting it up for sale, someone else buying it, transaction, boom. You don't even know the seller, you have no written agreement. So what I did, for example, when I bought my CryptoPunk, is that I've only bought it from a person I can trust, and from a person that has not had previous owners, but that was the first person to even mint that. And this person, then I had a contact with that person, and I asked that person to confirm to me, basically in a side arrangement, and give me the representation that there is no encumbrance, because I didn't want to buy an empty shell.
Crazy, Oliver. Wow. Okay. Yeah. This does, like, even like you mentioned, like you need to trust now. Like we were trying to move with Web3 into a trustless environment, and now all of a sudden, yeah, we have this. And I think really for also for the listeners, for the viewers, this is bigger than you think. A lot bigger, because that is one of the ways where Web3 really shines, when you give people, the asset, but also the commercial right to build out the brand, to use it for their brand. Like we've seen it with Bored Ape Yacht Club. CryptoPunks is similar. And this is so much of the magic also with Web3, because of the loops of ownership, and yeah, creating more value for the brand, which gives more value to you, and all this. Yeah, so crazy. So is there
But
any?
Bernhard, yes, just Bernhard, but let me anticipate your question, because
Yeah,
I
for
want to
sure.
add something to that as well. It sounds completely strange at first, but indeed it is inherent to the blockchain and Web3 situation that it sounds like a broken system. In fact, it is exactly the same for patents, for trademarks, and for copyrights. You can also buy a patent, and you even have a public register where you think, hey, I take a look at the public register. If it says that this person is the owner, it will be fine. It will probably even say that there are encumbrances, which is not the case, at least not in most national laws. So, in fact, it can happen exactly in the same way. You buy a patent, and this patent has been licensed to someone else. You will not benefit from the license, and you will have an encumbrance based on the patent. It's actually a completely typical scenario when you buy patents, for example, that patents have been licensed before. You will attach a list of the existing encumbrances, or if you're not allowed to disclose it, you will have some sort of whitelisting mechanism that you at least can find out that a certain company has been licensed before. The only thing that is new here is that you do not have a license agreement. You
Hmm.
would never transact a patent just by saying, "Hey, you can have it," or let's just change the register. You would always have an agreement to tell you to change the register, to update the data in the database, and that will then maybe identify you as the new owner. But again, it's not even necessary that you are listed as the owner in the copyright or trademark or patent register. So it can even be wrong, and you can still be the owner. So the let's say the difference between a register saying something and reality being the result of a transaction being something else is already something that is known in the entire intellectual property space. And I think one way how you could overcome that is by really making it mandatory to include encumbrances in the register for patents, trademarks, and copyrights. And the same thing that it would be mandatory to have some sort of an update of the blockchain information if there is any encumbrance and if there is a transaction. So right now, it only identifies you as the owner of the digital asset if you are in the blockchain. If that is basically if it is in your wallet, and you can be identified as the owner of that token. But it will never say, at least not to now, it will not say if the encumbrances exist and who is the beneficiary of these encumbrances. And that is something that we would need to develop as a community and as a technology, and also based on legal facts that transactions are only valid if they are registered. That would be great. I mean, we have the same thing for real estate, for example. If it's not in the register, it doesn't exist, right?
Hmm.
It's not the same thing for patents. So the public register is true and correct in the real estate market. It's not true and correct in IP market. It's absurd.
Okay, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, still a bunch of like I'm just, as you were saying this, I'm trying to figure this out. How can we put this on chain? And maybe we can't really, like I don't know, like it just gets messy, I guess, right? Like when you, so I have this Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT, and now I do this deal and that deal, and I don't know, to force me to, I guess, yeah, like it can't be probably solved on chain. There needs to be some kind of, okay, um, maybe the marketplaces also need to react and say, okay, only if it checks those requirements, like you see here, okay, it's been cleared for this for licensing, it's been cleared for some other stuff,
Yes.
and
I mean,
yeah.
you would do a due diligence. That's what it's
Mhm.
called. You make your due diligence before you make a transaction. And in this particular case, your due diligence would include checking the prior rights and encumbrances. So you could indeed include that as some sort of tick box that you need to fill in as the seller of an item. So, for example, the digital item is sold on a platform like OpenSea. You would have an information: does it come with commercial use rights, yes or no? Not displayed at this moment, for example. If you have the information, it comes with commercial use rights, it would be interesting to know, well, does it come with encumbrances as well? And,
Mhm.
and I think this could be something that could basically also be part of the code if you have a dynamic NFT. But you could also say this is an obligation that you have as the owner to keep it updated, and to enter this information as part of the description of your digital asset. So it is at least some sort of a transparency. It would be a bit burdensome, but I think, well, otherwise, simply everyone is buying a black box, and without the certainty that you actually got what you wanted and what you paid for.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's time for the NFT space to grow up here a little bit. Like I imagine like in a bull run, like you see the open sea, like it trades within seconds, right? There's not that much due diligence being done in seconds. Yeah, that's very interesting, and I think really important for the space to get right. So I think you already mentioned it, but maybe to repeat, what do you see as the next steps here to come to a solution?
So I think right now what we have is a first proof of concept with these profile pictures, for example. That was the very first hype. It was certainly a hype because people could flip them quickly, make a lot of money with them. The prices went through the roof. But it was also, once the people who were only in for the investment and for the money uh, uh, left the room again, It was great to identify what was achieved with this tokenization of digital assets, that you can in fact at least identify digital ownership, which you could not really do before. So it is really revolutionary that you have the way of identifying individual original copies of digital items, and that you can trade them in a transparent manner on the blockchain. That is only one thing. Using the token as an identifier for a brand or a community, taking it further to making the community part of a brand, like the brand growing from inside and having a direct consumer relationship between the brand and so the manufacturer and its community, and not going through sales channels, through marketing people and all of that, but it's really a direct interrelation and interaction between the brand and its users or consumers. I think this is really groundbreaking. And that is something that will be developed over time. You will see many of the existing and of the new NFT projects right now that have a component that is deeply founded in community engagement, and much less in a cheap, come on, let some artists do some pictures, we sell them, we flip them, we get royalties for secondary market sales. So I think the technology is there to stay. It will be developed further into use cases that would allow us to have our identities online, to have our digital assets or even our physical assets tokenized. It will be a much easier way of transacting and of interacting. And I'm very much looking forward, and I'm super bullish on Web3.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. With regards to that, I would like to transition. Like, you offered a little insight into how you work with brands. You know, like what means legal advisory if you work with a client. Because I think that's really interesting. There's more than just looking into the legal books and finding some paragraphs. Is
Yes,
there? Yeah.
absolutely. I think since I have seen quite a bit of different angles how to approach NFT related topics, I think clients have come to appreciate that it's not only legal advice I can give them, but that I want to be involved, and I really am also interested in early phase developments of projects and how they can be carried out over time and really made to something that also may be unique. So I do think that I have a certain creativity, but also deep interest in how brands can reach their consumers and their customers, and how something really makes you best use of the technology. So, indeed, I think if you see the different sort of clients that I have, it's everything from artists over to NFT platforms. To advertising, digital marketing agencies, but also brands and consumer industry, automotive industry. It's a very broad range of different company types and also individuals I interact with. So I think right now it's not only legal advice, but it's more legal and strategy that I would offer as a service. And that is something that I think is important, that you look, as you would say in Germany, über den Tellerrand. So you look a little bit further than just your own plate. You also want to see other people's plates, enjoy the entire restaurant, and see in which country it is, if you so want.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's just a better solution, right? Like, if you also are aware of other things related to the success of the project, then I think that really helps. So what do companies need to know? So, like, in the space, I heard, like, with legal stuff, you want to start before you start the project, right? Like, not just, okay, we've built this beautiful thing, it's already out there, and now, oh, let's get some legal advice. What's the best practice for someone that says, okay, I want to get started with Web3? Let's also have some legal advice here. What would you recommend?
So I think it's very different depending on what your starting point as a potential client is. So if you are a startup, for example, and you are super creative and everything you're like, it's just coming right out of your head, and you have to do something and you want to develop something, then your first idea will probably not be, can I involve an attorney early, pay them hourly rates, or give them shares of the company that I'm building or whatever. But it would rather be, let me develop everything the way I think it may work, and then just have a quick double check, quick quick legal check. That's my favorite word. Have a quick legal check if things are okay. So let the attorney take the entire liability if it's not okay, but just involve them very late and pay them little. That is not a concept that makes a lot of sense, but that is a concept that is very often applied. And we will also find solutions for that. Quite honestly, we would prefer to be involved at the early stage. We would be we would prefer to be involved throughout the entire development of the creative idea of a project, because very often you can just twist left and right just a little bit, and the entire project becomes the qualification is a completely different one. Just one example: the decision whether you want to airdrop something or you want to sell it is a fundamental one. Because if you have an airdrop, it's a donation, or it's something that you give to someone. It's a gift. It follows completely different rules, also of liability, than it does when you sell something to someone. If you publish your roadmap, for example, it can be perceived as a representation that you will be doing something, like a guarantee. You promise that you will deliver something. People invest because of the promise. So if you can keep some of the aspects outside of the roadmap that you publish before you do your minting, it may be beneficial for your project. First of all, because it's a surprise effect, and I think it's pretty cool, but as well because you will not have the pressure that you have to deliver, because if you don't promise, you don't have to deliver. So some of these things are between marketing, between creative, let's say, construction of the program or the project. And there are some factors that you can change and really change also the qualification of the project.
Yeah, that's great tips here. To be honest, like if you're planning on this project, like yeah, there's so many legal aspects that feed into your strategy, game theory, even with as you said, airdrops and all that stuff. I That wasn't on my radar, to be honest. So thanks for that, for sure. I think you've already mentioned some. What do you see, like startups or something, getting wrong with relationship to legal and Web3?
I think saving legal costs is always a dangerous thing. I don't want to say that you have to involve lawyers and pay them a fine, but at least it is a bet that you were right in your choice of jurisdiction, of terms and conditions, of construction of your project, and so on and so forth. So let's say, I don't want to call it a mistake, because it may be an economic decision not to involve lawyers early, but at least you should make an educated decision. So just going for it and saying, hey, it's an unregulated space and I can do whatever I want, and courts will not come because I'm the small project. They will come and go for the bigger projects. Taxes, I don't care. I'm an anonymous person. The project is unknown. So things like that would be rather unsmart, I guess. So if you want to be perceived as a serious player in the market, you would also act seriously, which means you would not, sorry, you would not trick people into buying things that are useless. You would not try to avoid paying taxes. For example, you may not want to choose a shady jurisdiction just to hide some corporate structures. All these things are decisions you can make as a project owner, and I think they will influence the way you will be perceived, not only by the market but also by regulators when it comes to chasing you down.
Very well said. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, Oliver, I would like to. So recent events, and I'm talking Chat GPT. I've seen you post about AI, and yeah, you're also quite excited. I think everyone is. How have you experienced like the rise and the explosion really of this technology? And obviously later down, I would like to know how it might change your work. I don't know. Like, do we
Yes.
have an AI lawyer here?
Yeah, well, I'm afraid we will have quite some AI law around, but that's okay. I think the entire development of artificial intelligence has been really breathtaking in the last couple of months or also years. And it's just started with DALL-E or Midjourney, like these graphic development tools. And also like this chatbot, ChatGPT from OpenAI. is something really, really exciting. So you put your question in, or you put a topic in, and tell it, for example, write an article in a very sophisticated ancient English voice about Web3. And they will just, it will bam, and you have your article. And it's not a bad one even. Or find, list arguments and counter arguments why fashion is the new big thing in the digital industry. Bam, and you will have your article. And it's really, really astonishing. The results are always usable. Sometimes they're wrong, but they're at least they sound great and they look great, and it's at least an average quality that you will receive. So in this particular case, I just tried it by saying, just putting a prompt in this chatbot, in this chat GPT, saying, provide a standard non-disclosure agreement. And it takes like 10 seconds, and you get a completely viable template of a non-disclosure agreement, which means if this is what will happen in the future, people will use that tool maybe to replace very simple legal stuff. Sure, it still makes sense to have a lawyer check if that makes sense. But I mean, it's just with an article, it will kind of make it easier for artists. It make it easier for copywriters. It will make it easier for people writing texts, but it doesn't replace the quality and the individual spirit of creative people, at least not for now, I would say. The development is really exciting, and all the legal questions, obviously, that are related to that are exciting as well. Things like copyright: who is the owner of the copyright? Who is the creator? Is it the one putting the prompts in? So the questions and the keywords that will create the artificial artwork, if you so want to call it. There are a lot of really, really exciting questions that will come up in the future, and that's just really started.
For sure. Do you see the legal field being disrupted here, or what? I mean, we don't know yet, obviously, but how does it feel right now?
I think if you look at law as just being well, text and agreements, then it will be very useful for attorneys, and it may also be very dangerous for like the people that are focusing on very standard agreements. Because I mean, to be honest, many of the standard agreements we use are already based on templates that we used before as well. So that is something artificial intelligence can do itself. You just add a couple of words left and right, or you basically have a template, an automatic contract generator that already existed. Well, that has already existed for the last 10 years at least. So you have software. If you have a basic agreement, you just type in the name, and that thing will manufacture the own contract as well. I think if you understand law, or the relationship between a company and a lawyer about something more personal, then I would believe that it is difficult to find an AI replacing an attorney. I think very often involving an attorney is about comfort, about a personal relationship, about trust, about experience, and all of that cannot very easily be replaced. Agreements, drafting, yes, I think so. Even briefs for courts and things like that, yes. Articles, absolutely. But the personal relationship will not be replaced anytime soon.
That makes a lot of sense. And I had a 2 hour discussion with some friends yesterday, and with the AI and the output, it still takes an expert to say, "Oh yeah, this makes sense." As you said, like if I asked, "Hey, give me a template for some legal issue," I don't know if that's correct. Like you can tell me, since you're a lawyer and you
Yeah.
know your stuff. And so I think it's, yeah, probably, as you said, like more of an aid, an addition, an assistant, if you will. But yeah, does not replace the expertise.
Totally. And let me give you an example. So I saw someone posting yesterday as a prompt, hey chatbot, can you please produce a smart contract for a DAO where there are 21 people having voting rights, and if you have the majority. So really very precise way of describing it. And the chat GPT just manufactured a smart contract. So everyone was like, "What?" I mean, it's even code language. So wow, that is super impressive. And then I just copied a couple of coders that I know, and a couple of developers, and said, "Hey guys, Does that make any sense? And they checked and said, well, it's utterly stupid. This doesn't make any sense. It's not going to work. Which means it looks impressive, but the fact that it is not, or that it just looks like something it pretends to be, but it is not, kind of, I think, tells a lot about the quality also of text, of information, also about agreements it will manufacture. That will be improved in the future, and I'm certain that it would also be able to code in the future, as much as it will be able to write legal briefs and documents. But for now, we shouldn't trust on the information that is output by these tools.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Okay, thank you for your time already. I don't want to grab too much of it. I like to borrow a question here from Tim Ferriss, big podcaster, and he always asks people, like if you had a billboard, like a big billboard that the whole world could see, or very many people, and what would you write on it? Maybe with regards to Web3 and legal issues or legal stuff. Is there anything that comes to mind?
It's a good question. I think being mindful is something that is super important. Being mindful of legal issues, obviously, but being mindful in general, that we are in a space that is still under development. I think it is something where people would want to be perceived as the good ones and act as good people. So if you so want, it could be good people. Just feel good and be good.
Love it, love it. No, very very important. Be mindful. Be good. Like it makes sense. It pays off. So. Yeah, Oliver, thank you so much. Where can people find you if they want to know more about you, connect with you?
Yeah, please do connect with me on LinkedIn. I think I'm rather responsive. I'm very happy to have new connections and even chat, interact with people. So that would be my platform. I'm not on Twitter, Instagram, or anything else. So LinkedIn is my only social media that I'm using. Web3 Lex is the tool. And while the traditional website is there as well, but it's very underwhelming. So please don't go there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the insights. Yeah, this is someone that knows the legal stuff, works with all the companies. So thanks for sharing your
Absolutely.
knowledge
My
here.
pleasure. Thank you for having me, Bernhard.
Yeah. Bye bye.